Yes. Hello, young professionals with career up now. I am Daniela Baker, and today we are here with Adam Probolsky. And Adam, he is a president of Probolsky Research, a Latina and women-owned market and opinion research firm working on behalf of corporate, election, government, nonprofit, and other special interest clients. And again, with our Wisdom Wednesday, Adam will be sharing his journey through his professional life and sharing some wisdom and piece of advices with us. And again, I'm Daniela Baker, and my area is life and career transitional coaching for people that are looking for the next stage and step into their lives. Hello, Adam, we are on the same time zone, so good afternoon to you.
Yes, likewise.
And so tell me, Adam, tell me a little bit of what your firm does.
Sure. So we do market and opinion research. We do more opinion research than market research. So that means kind of in the traditional sense of we're pollsters. So a lot of people think of presidential elections or that sort of thing when they think of what we do. But really, our job, we work mostly for government agencies, so cities and counties and state government agencies, to help understand the experience of what people are going through and how they relate to what those agencies do. So a city wants to pass a tax, a state agency wants to get more people to wear seatbelts. A water district wants to build a big water treatment facility, and maybe there's some people around them that aren't so happy about some big thing being built. They want to understand what people care about and how they can kind of respond back to them. And the corporate side, it's big evil corporations trying to build things or sell something and figure out how to relate to the public to make sure that they're not, going up against too much headwind. Same thing for nonprofits. How do they kind of connect with their customer? How do they connect with their donor? It's kind of, all the things that you might see on TV, like focus groups or surveys. Obviously, technology has changed a bit how we do our work, but it's the same thing of getting opinions of people.
So you basically send surveys through what, emails or calling people to get their opinion of what do they think about this next, capital project that their city or county is doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So we use all kinds of means, calling people on their landlines, because they still happen, they still exist, calling them on their mobile phones, texting them, emailing them. There's other modes that we use. There's online panels, and you have to choose the right method for the right client. So it's just a matter of what you're trying to accomplish and what's available to you. We do also do a lot of work on video and a lot of focus groups as well to really get to the root of what people are thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so tell me, when you're 18 years old, is that what you're thinking to do?
Probably not too far off.
Oh,
When
really?
I was
Okay.
when I was younger, I wanted to be an architect,
Uh-huh.
and then I had the opportunity to work in an architect's office when I was much younger, through a cool opportunity as an intern in my early teens. And I realized that most architects didn't make much money, and they were kind of stuck in a basement, with weird chemicals back then, because it wasn't all computerized. And I was like, I don't want to do this at all. But when I was 18, I was volunteering, and I was a political activist, very much engaged in politics. And I thought that I was going to be a political consultant, and I was basically working towards that. And to some degree, that's what I did for, many years, until I realized that there was kind of a way to kind of model my career after the way I like to work, kind of project based, and also being a specialist. One of my early lessons was that, there's a lot of generalists. There's a lot of people that can run campaigns. There's a lot of people who can kind of do big strategy stuff. And then there's, and that's not bad, but if you're a specialist, you only have to market to the people that do that work to give you business. The generalist has to market to the whole world, right? To every candidate, to every company, to every agency. Whereas the specialist, as a pollster, you just have to talk to 100 people and have them give you enough business to keep you alive. And so it's a little bit easier from a marketing perspective, but also, more fun to be the expert in the room.
So, okay. And what did you do? What did you go to college for? Because it's not that many people that I talk to that say, yeah, at 18, I knew, that I would be doing something similar to what I'm doing today. It's usually like, the person that I spoke to last week, Catherine, she was into music. She went to music and now she's doing marketing. So she does music as a hobby. So what did you do to college? What did you do in college? What was your major?
So that's complicated because I went to school for a few semesters, but it didn't really appeal to me very much. So I did not finish school when I was younger. It just wasn't a thing for me. At the time, I had a couple different businesses. And so me going to class felt like I was taking away from building a business. It felt like it was a waste of time. It didn't feel like I was really learning much, and I was kind of being unproductive there in that environment. And so I didn't finish. I just pursued my businesses. And
wait a minute. Before you go ahead, what did your parents think about that?
So, I'll tell you, my parents were, very supportive of whatever I wanted to do. And I'll give you one example. One of my early businesses was importing toys and novelties from Taiwan, which is very incongruent to what I do today, but it was just one of the things I was doing. So at 16 in high school, I had big tractor trailers pulling up in front of my house, filling up our big garage with product from Taiwan, and then the next day having it shipped out to toy stores all over the country. They had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was, dealing in six-figure, import-export sales, and somehow I was able to manage that as a teenager, and they were just kind of clueless and supportive and whatever. He's not getting into trouble, so whatever he wants to do.
Oh, good for you. You had the right parents for you, Adam. That is so awesome. But obviously you're driven. You're not just home, watching. We didn't have Netflix back then, maybe Blockbuster, VHS videos the whole time. You're doing, so you had that entrepreneurial spirit already.
Yeah, I mean, I had a foundation in that, and it's something that I really, I identified when I met my wife, early on, that we had a shared experience, right? She had an entrepreneurial family, I did too. Not my parents owned a bagel bakery, so it's not like it was like some grand entrepreneurial pursuit with venture capital, but I saw hard work paying off, doing something for yourself. And I learned from my parents that, one, I never wanted to work as physically hard as they did, because my father, broke himself working that physically hard. And two, working for yourself is just much better, even though it's hard, and there's, it's not like you're going to take a lot of time off, but you get all the rewards and you get the flexibility. And that was really something that I always sought. I think I worked for other people in my life, maybe a sum total of 18 months or 2 years over the course of that time, over the course of my younger years, but almost always having my own business on the side.
Interesting. So you started like in an architect firm just as a internship, and you found out that was great for you because you found out this is not what I want to be doing. And how old are you then?
I was like 13 at the time.
13. Okay.
I went to an amazing school that, my overprotective Jewish mother sent me to, that it was a private school. And they had this program at the end of the last month of school called the Unit. And you basically, like a lot of kids just went to Europe for the month, or traveled, South America or something like that. Or you could design your own plan. And mine was to, intern in an architect's office. And it was, like you said, very helpful in understanding. I still love architecture. I just realized it wasn't a career path for me very early on, rather than, going to school for it and getting a job and feeling like I was in this dead end place. I got to experience it and say, okay, we're moving on.
And so how did you get into the import and export business? Were you doing it by yourself? Like, did you have a mentor, or did you? I guess we didn't have much of internet back then, so I don't want to.
No, there wasn't. So believe me, I've had several mentors in my life, more in the political and research side of things. And I'm, I'll talk a lot about that because I'm grateful for them. But no, in the import export or the import business, it sounds ridiculous today, and I have to try to figure out what the kind of similarities or kind of experience you might have today. But essentially, Taiwan had kind of almost a consulate or an organization that promoted their exports. And so they had an office that would go out and get catalogs for you, like literally printed catalogs. And I would pour through them and find interesting products that I thought would sell in the United States. And it was a lot being done by fax. I'd have, the old fax machines had that paper that wasn't really imprinted. It was like thermal paper. And there's a lot of faxing of back and forth. There's fantastic language barrier issues, because it was always usually the kid of the factory owner who was like sending messages back and forth, and they're broken English because the factory owner had no English. And it's even better because back then they had what they call these freight forwarders that would actually front the money for you for the purchase, and the product would be COD, cash on delivery, from Taipei. Like today, like that's insane, right? You just give a credit card or you wire the money, but literally I had no cash out of pocket until I received the product. I mean, just nuances that I'm sure someone can find those exploits today, but they're obviously different because you're not going to get free stuff, stuff delivered you're not going to get, $500,000 of the product delivered from Taipei today without paying for it.
Especially to a 16-year-old, right?
Right. Luckily they had no idea how old I was.
So, okay. And how did you find the buyers here? Did you make phone calls? Did you knock door to door? How was?
Yeah, so it was one of those, actually one of the earliest experiences, kind of flash forward to being a specialist. So that kind of made me realize that. So I was looking at toys and novelties, and there's like kind of 3 tiers of who you could sell to. There's the Target and Walmart. Back then there was Toys R Us. And there was a really high barrier to entry to those places because, they have buyers that are being pitched, constantly, and they have very strict processes for how they buy product. And so while I didn't totally ignore them, I realized quickly that they weren't going to be, useful for me or valuable for me to really pursue, especially as a kid. And there were certainly local stores, one-off mom and pop toy stores back then, and novelty stores that I was pursuing. But I quickly realized there was this sweet spot in the middle, these medium-sized chains of toy stores that had, and novelty stores that had between 6 and 26 stores in these regions. And there was usually a buyer for them that would buy regionally for them. And they were the sweet spot, because the one-off mom and pop might buy half a dozen or, a dozen or so of your product. But the regional ones would buy hundreds or thousands of your product. And that was where, and they were just a lot more actually accessible than the Walmart buyer. And so that's how I pursued it. I went for those middle ground, those easy, and they're, quite frankly, they're not as easy to find, but they're easier to find than the mom and pops, and they because they stand out because they've got more stores, and they were the ideal buyers.
And Adam, how did you figure that out at the age of 16?
I don't know. I guess I was a resourceful kid. I did a lot of reading, and I kind of played with the things or dabbled in the things that I was interested in. I was interested in technology. I was interested in toys. I mean, not like playing with toys, but like, electronics. And so my big, my big product that I had a couple successful, holiday seasons with was Motorola's original cell phone, the brick. It was a brick cell phone, they called it. And if you look it up, the Motorola brick phone, that a lot of people watching won't have any clue what I'm talking about, but it had a big antenna on top. It was this beige color, making them in toy format. And so basically the same form and look, but when you press the buttons, they made kind of more novelty sounds. But you pressed the one, it rang, and it was kind of a prestigious thing to have a cell phone at that time, right? Nobody really could afford it. It was very expensive. So they were certainly somewhere sold as pure toys for kids, but I think probably the majority of them were purchased as almost like a fake status symbol. And people used them to pretend that they had a cell phone. And I think that was the driving force behind the success.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. And so going down memory lane, 16, you decided, college is not for me. I want to do something else. Architecture is not for me. Like, you're a businessman or a business young man back then. And so where did you go from there? What happened to the import business, and what was the next step?
So I had started, and for everyone who starts hearing what I'm about to talk about from a partisan standpoint, wait till the end, because you won't hate me. But I started listening to talk radio. This is in like '88, and there was this guy named Rush Limbaugh who was talking politics, and what he said kind of at the time sort of resonated with me. I grew up in a pretty liberal place, where you're a very democratic place in New Jersey. My parents weren't particularly partisan, but everybody they knew was a Democrat. And I actually knew some Democratic senators and elected officials, and I wasn't particularly partisan at the time, but I started kind of gravitating towards conservative politics. And once I was, in California, we moved here when I was in my early teens. We moved to a place where I am now, Orange County, California, which is still fairly conservative, but back then was kind of like Reagan country. It was this, bastion of conservative Republican politics, and the most Republican county in the country. And so I started kind of gravitating towards that. And in high school, I was a part of the Republican club. And at 18, or right after high school, I answered an ad in the newspaper, because that's how you got jobs back then, ads in the newspaper. They were called classified ads. And
I remember those.
Yes, it was kind of like Craigslist, but in print. And it said work for conservative, Republican, Christian, candidates and causes. And so, being the good Jewish boy I was, I responded to the ad, and it was this somewhat shady call center operation that was raising money for candidates and had some political consulting happening at the company. And I learned a lot of what not to do there, but I also started meeting it's a very welcoming environment. Even today, if you show up at, Bernie Sanders headquarters in your hometown, they're going to grab you in, right? They're going to welcome you. They're going to put you to work. They're going to want you to, help out. So pretty much in any political organization.
Was it a paying job or was it another internship?
So it was a paying job. And I think we were just, making fundraising phone calls. We had these like index cards with the contact information of people, including their past donor history. And so I started to meet people in politics, and like I said, it's very welcoming. They kind of bring you in, and if you're willing to work, they'll put you to work. And there's certainly volunteer opportunities, but certainly paid opportunities. And I met this whole world of elected officials and political players, and it to the point where I built this kind of political career of being on the executive committee for our county party and having mentors that were legislators, and really knowing thousands of people in the political sphere of California. And it's kind of intoxicating, right? If you're today, I'm not in any way impressed by it, but I spent a lot of time with governors and U.S. senators and foreign heads of state that would come to our events, and I drove former secretaries of defense to the airport, right? I mean, I spent time with former big time leaders, and it was a very fun and unique, different kind of time. And I'm glad I had those experiences. Basically, one of the kind of life lessons I learned there was, I had, and I still have my calendars, printed, actual portfolio calendars, we used to use. And I had scheduled meetings or events for breakfast, for coffee, for lunch, for drinks, for dinner, every single, and evening events every single day for 10 years. I mean, I did not stop. I mean, I was at my desk sometimes, but almost always out there going to everything always. And it allowed me to, which leads into the next thing, was build an incredible list and database of contacts of people who I knew fairly well, because I was constantly in front of them. And that database is the foundation for pretty much everything I've built ever since. Is those relationships that you build are what drives my business today.
So that then was the beginning of what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the beginning of me figuring out how to make a living out of at that time more politics, but public policy, and so that's essentially what it was. And for about 8-10 years or so, I pretty much was doing that. I at some point pretty early on, I opened my own shop, which today, if you walked a precinct for Hillary in 2016 and you have an iPhone, you call yourself a political consultant. It's kind of, anybody can say they're a political consultant. Back then, you really had to go through the ranks. You had to volunteer, and maybe you got a chance to get a campaign job, and then maybe you got a chance to work in a legislative office or a congressional office, and you kind of built yourself up to the point where maybe you'd have a chance at making a consulting career. For me, I was a little more entrepreneurial, and I opened an office. I put a shingle out. I hired a secretary, and I said I'm a political consultant. And if you had $600, I would do whatever you asked me to do. I didn't care if you wanted me to walk a precinct or organize a press conference or lobby, City Hall. I would do whatever you asked me to do. And then it was 1,200, and then it was 5,000, and then you can't afford me today, right? So I basically built that up and just kind of did anything I could with those relationships and the skills that I had built up over that time with developing relationships with press and just kind of learning all those skills. And then at about 10 years in, I realized, I want to be a specialist, and I focused in on just being research, which also sounds ridiculous because, I had no formal training as a pollster, but I just started doing it and saying I was a pollster. And that didn't go so well for the first, year or so because, nobody wants to hire a guy who just says he's a pollster. But when you built up a track record of being accurate and released some public polling and had some great benefactors, people who were kind enough to give me business and saw the value I was providing. And, since then we haven't looked back. We're a decent sized, medium-sized research company. Since we have a CEO and a majority owner who happens to also be my wife, but the company's just grown ever since then.
So I'm guessing she's the Latina-owned business because you don't
Yes.
look very much Latin to me.
Yeah. Honestly, she doesn't look that much either, which is odd. But she is a Latina and a woman. Yes.
Okay. So I'm thinking here, what are the personality traits or strengths of somebody has to be an entrepreneur like yourself? What do you think that helped you to just going from the import business to really selling yourself basically, right, to the business or to the people around you?
Yeah, I think, look, going back to having a foundation of entrepreneurial, a foundation of entrepreneurial kind of guidance, right? Not that my parents had any clue what I was doing or gave me any specific advice, but just seeing, parents who worked very hard and saw the rewards for that. And I have, friends who were entrepreneurial who didn't have, right? They had parents who were teachers, but they had, mentors or someone who kind of guided them or they could look to and say, I want to be like that in some regard, or the theme of entrepreneurialism is there that they can latch on to. So I think that's a big part of it, is finding someone who you can kind of want to emulate from that perspective. And having a high risk tolerance. I mean, throughout my career, there have been, months and quite frankly, I have stories of years where, we didn't make money because of, the market crash, at points. And so there were really difficult inflection points in business. So, if you're someone that, wants to get your paycheck every day, every week, and wants to have this vision of retiring with, this month in your much in your pension, and going off to, live in Belize, then, entrepreneurial, pursuits maybe not for you. But if you want the flexibility of, I can go to Hawaii tomorrow if COVID rules allow, I don't know, but I can work from there for weeks on end. I can take off any day of the week and work from my cell phone, but on the other hand, I probably got to work on every Sunday for at least an hour or so to prepare for the week. So there's these trade-offs that you have to make. But I think it's to some degree having some model for it is helpful. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, you hear people talk about it all the time, like hang out with the people that you want to emulate or have, spend time with. You want to be rich, spend time with rich people. You want to be, you want to speak Spanish, right? Spend time with people who speak Spanish, So I've, throughout my life, had the opportunity to spend time with those people that I want to not necessarily emulate everything about them, but certainly their financial success and and their relationship success, I've had that opportunity, and I've just kind of put myself in those places, and traded on relationships to be able to put myself in those positions. One of the things that I think have been helpful to me is my relationships. Some of my closest like business relationships / friends are oftentimes 5 and 10 years older than me, and sometimes even a lot older than me. And to some degree that could be there have been moments in my life where that was maybe a little disheartening, kind of like, well, holy cow, these people, this guy's got $1 million house and I'm living in, living at my parents' house, right? Or they've got a $3 million house and I'm living in a $300,000 condo. How am I ever going to get there? Or and on the other hand, it was kind of helpful because I had this roadmap from all these people that I knew for how they actually did it, how they got from starting out as a consultant in their dad's office, getting their first $5,000 a month contract, to having their $10 million a year business and having 20 employees and living in the $5 million house. So and we were close enough where I kind of got to see that progression, and they shared a lot of those, positives and negatives along the way. So that was super helpful for me. And I also got the chance to hang out with some of their clients who were billionaires, right? And got to see their lives. And some of them are still billionaires and some of them aren't. But you kind of got to see what all the things they went through.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking here as you walk us through, your career path, your professional life. I'm assuming that at some point you said, the first year or two wasn't that easy, making money, how we're going to pay the bills. So I'm imagining you got some no's. No, thank you, or maybe let's talk later, and later never arrives. How did you deal with that, especially at the beginning? Where did you get the energy to keep going when moments like that, you go like, oh my gosh, should I go get a job at Starbucks?
Right. So, look, I definitely, I don't want to pretend like this is, obviously there were difficult times, and I definitely doubted, never in my full, long-term success. But even, today I doubt, okay, are we going to be able to grow to where I want to grow and things like that? And yeah, should I go get the job? And so I think I definitely just constantly believed in my ability. And I saw this vision for where I wanted to go, not necessarily like the dollar amount or the house I wanted to live in or any of those specific things or the specific client I wanted. This just big idea that I was going to grow something that was going to be sustainable. And I'll tell you, true also having, found the partner I found, the wife who is, as supportive as anyone's ever been to anyone, right? She is like my biggest champion and my biggest cheerleader. And she really kind of helped me realize some things about myself that really helped kind of open my eyes to how to be more successful. And one of the things, the lessons we talk about all the time that she taught me was, I know how to make myself feel important. And it's one of these things that not everybody has kind of command over. So for instance, in politics and in public policy and government, there's this a big group of people who want to feel important, and they run for office or they get a job that kind of puts them in power, and that's really empowering for them. And that's how they identify. That's how they identify their power and their authority and how they feel important. And my wife helped me realize that I know how to do that without getting elected, without having a government job, without having like this power in the sense that most people think of it. I have, if you look at, if you search for me in a Google search, you'll see these like semi-viral moments every year in my business, in my world, especially now among opinion research and market research. But even back when I was younger, being quoted in the New York Times, right? That's this like inflection point of like, oh wow, it's a euphoric high for someone like me who likes to have publicity, and all of a sudden, if I get myself in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or I get 5,000 views on something we do, like you have those moments of I feel important, and you don't have to go out there and do the run for office, which is not so productive for someone like me. So that's one thing I really encourage people to do, is find out how to figure out how to make yourself feel important, and just do it yourself. Don't rely on other people, and don't constantly, so you don't have to constantly be searching for that high, whatever it is, right? Figure out how to do it yourself.
And so early on, we talked about mentors, and you said, "Oh, I have a lot to talk about mentors." Like, do you have one or two that really come to mind that were really there for you when you needed them?
Yeah, for sure. One was a county party chairman who has probably a thousand younger people that he mentored along the way, that I was the beneficiary of him kind of taking me under his wing and willing to give me advice, and he was just known for it. And so I would go meet with him. I would go ask him, call him, ask him questions. When moments of crises happened, which did in my younger career, like a county supervisor, which is a very powerful position, calling me a liar in the newspaper, which could be ruinous for a young political consultant. He gave me the advice on how to navigate that. And then, yeah, that was like an important relationship that I cultivated, and so did he. But there's, I found in my life that when you ask people for advice, they generally say yes. And sometimes it's one-off, and sometimes it's somebody you talk to a couple times a year or less. But there's moments where you find that person who's going to be a little bit more engaged with you. I saw I think it was Steve Jobs story about him calling the president of Xerox when he was like 16, and found his number in the phone book, which obviously is different today. But I mean, and the guy laughed when he called and asked for what he asked for, but he gave it to him. So, I mean, it's the same as true today. The technology is different, and maybe the ability to reach someone is a little bit different. But people are willing to do. Another one of my mentors was a state legislative leader, Republican leader in the state legislature, a good friend today. And again, just kind of built a relationship by being around each other. It's one of the things that I kind of explain to people. I speak to sometimes, college kids and about, politics and public policy. And there's this idea that money buys everything. Politics is all corrupt and it's all about money. And the answer is, look, money is a helpful tool in developing a relationship, let's say with an elected official, because they have to raise money, and you can go to their fundraiser when you write them a $500 check, and you can meet them, and you can do that a few times a year, and you can build a relationship that way. Or you can also show up at 100 community events where they're everywhere, and just week after week, day after day, say hi, meet them, talk to them, little small talk. Over the course of weeks and months and years, you develop a really strong relationship with someone. Hey, can we go get coffee? Can we go get lunch? Can I ask you a few questions? There's 1,000 stories of that sort of thing, of people building relationships without having some organic business interest or donor status or anything other than, hey, can I get your advice? And those relationships, for sure were tremendous value to me, and still today. And by the way, I don't know if we ever get there, but just to be clear, we are as a company, we are nonpartisan. I'm an independent. I had this kind of journey through partisan politics that I'm grateful for, because I really understand both progressive and conservative politics today, more so I think than most people. But at some point we kind of got out of the partisan world and went into the nonpartisan world.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I'm just thinking here too, because of how it has, with the social media, how this has changed. And seems like when you first got that first job from the, newspaper classifieds, it was much more face-to-face. Right? You'd meet and see people. And today, it seems like it has changed so much. How somebody just embarking on this journey, fresh out of college, or like there's no classifieds anymore. Like Indeed, you try to apply for Indeed, and I think it's like you and another 15,000 people for the same job.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people that are studying right now, where the technology is at right now, how to have that 5 minutes face-to-face, with somebody that can be an influencer for them?
So I still do it all the time. I mean, I want to get a reporter who I want to cover something we're up to. If their DMs are open, I DM them on Twitter, and I get a response, 7 times out of 10. If it's something that's marginally relevant to them. I pay for an upgraded version of LinkedIn. I don't even know what it is, $300 a year or something. And I think that gives me the ability to in-mail people, send messages to people, maybe more so than other people might. I'm not even sure, but I think that's a thing. And on LinkedIn, people are, I think, much more responsive to, someone asking a question, or can I get some advice? It's kind of a natural forum for that. It's not like, hey, can you give me a job, $100,000 a year job tomorrow? It's, hey, I'm interested in, in my case, market research, opinion research. Would you take 20 minutes and talk to me about that? Sure. Here's a link to get on my calendar. I mean, I'll do that for anybody. And I make it really easy because I had a lot of people who opened doors for me. But I think you're going to find a majority of people, if you can get in touch with them, will give you that moment. There's like 1,000 stories of Mark Cuban, answering, random, emails from people, and, most of them saying, hey, I'm not interested, but at least responding to them. And Mark Cuban's a billionaire who's, probably not the most accessible person. So, I mean, I think that there's plenty of ways through platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, or quite frankly, send a FedEx. I mean, that's most people don't get, 1,000 FedExes a day. So spend $60, send it overnight priority, and it's got that purple label or something on it, and open it up, and there's a printed handwritten note from you or something saying, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can we have 20 minutes at your office, or whatever it is? There's still ways of getting through to people, getting through the clutter, and figuring out how to get in front of folks.
Wow, that FedEx one was very creative, Adam. I like that. So now that you have, the vision 2020 and looking back, would that be something that you'd have done differently, or a lesson that you learned that is still so valuable to you today?
Boy, sure. I mean, I would have bought Bitcoin and early on. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other things that I would have done. But I think I'm grateful for what I did do, and that is build quality relationships, build trust with people, right? Follow through on what I said I was going to do. So today, there's literally thousands of people who a lot of people say it's who you know, but really it's who knows you, right? So there's thousands of people who know me, have a sense of who I am, have a sense of my commitment and my ability, and would say really good things if someone asked. And that kind of ripple effect is pretty dramatic in building a business or in building a career. It's not just, we're hiring now, and I asked, the person we're looking at for references. Sure, that's one part of having a strong network of people that know who you are and have a general sense of you're being a good person. But having 1,000 people that can say good things about you is even better, because that's going to really help you along the way in all kinds of ways. People are going to think of you for the next job or for the next project. So building that network and keeping in touch with that network. I probably could have done better at keeping in touch with my network, and I still can. We all can. I had an idea for an app that you can probably replicate in some fashion that basically programizes or makes programmatic outreach to your network. It's just kind of this idea that and it's part of, my wife's a former fundraiser who kind of had built this system for her clients. And it's basically just be constantly in front of the people that you care about, that you're interested in, that you want to know about you. And it's as simple as sending a link to an article you read. Hey, thought you'd be interested in this. And you can send that to hundreds of people. Obviously try to make it relevant to who you're sending it to, or the ones that you really care to build a relationship with. Pick up the phone and actually call them. And I know that's like not so in right now for people under 30, but or send them a text or whatever the mode that you feel most comfortable. But I will say, having a conversation, whether it's Zoom or in person or on the phone, is much more powerful than a random text. It kind of engenders kind of much more of a connection to people, and you can share kind of a lot more genuinely that way. But I think that's one piece of advice, is that I definitely do a even better job at keeping contact with my network. And if you think of someone, this is good advice for like family too, right? If somebody comes across your mind and you haven't talked to them in like a few weeks or 6 months or 6 years, just call them. Just do it now. Somebody just popped in my head just now, and when we're done with this, I'm going to call him. Like, I haven't talked to him in years, and I feel like a horrible person because I don't know how he fared in COVID, and I don't know what's going on with him and his family. But you should just call them. Just do it now, and you'll be better off for it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think this is a wonderful piece of wisdom and advice, is that, that reliability that you're talking, being trustworthy. And also you mentioned earlier during our conversation, that was one thing that really sustained your business for the first year, that you said, people knew me, they knew my numbers were right, they could rely on me. I was not fudging with it, or I was just like, people could trust me. And I think that is something that has not changed, that trustworthiness, somebody that you can rely on, that they said, I'm going to do this. And you're like, yeah, you can live up to Adam because we know he's going to do it. You don't even have to worry about. I feel with younger people today, that is something to really impress upon them, especially like, texting, message, email, sometimes you send out into the universe, you never know if you're going to get a response or not.
Yeah. Or I don't feel so good today, so I'm not going to go in or go to work, but you know what? Go to work, and especially since you're not going to work, you're just getting on Zoom, just do it, be reliable. I'll tell you, I have a great example. I had an with the LA Times. They had their own poll at the time, and I was going to talk to them about kind of taking on, potentially doing the LA Times poll, which is like even today is a pretty big potential business. And the guy who was running it, I had met, and we had talked, and he said, come on in. And I had just come into the country from somewhere, and I realized 8 o'clock that morning that I had a meeting at like 11 o'clock, and I just wasn't be able to get there. And so I called and I said, hey, can we put it off till tomorrow? And he was gracious enough to say yes. The next day I got in the car and I was a little bit late, and I was about 10 or 12 minutes late, and I had called and he didn't answer. And I got to the lobby of the LA Times and I called up, kind of security there. I called up and he said, "Don't bother." And he hung up the phone. And I realized then that I really screwed up. But he had been gracious enough to give me a day. And then when I was 10, 12 minutes late, he was like, "Ain't gonna happen," right? He just hung up. And that was the last time I ever had a conversation about it. Would I have definitely had the business? I don't know. But it was like a really powerful message for me that said, don't be late. And don't take advantage of people, because some people like me, I'm going to be gracious about it probably just because I understand things happen. But don't be late. Don't take advantage.
Yeah, that is something powerful too. To just if you said you're going to be there, just be there. And I am Brazilian, so I'm notorious to run a few minutes late, and I try my best, and I always think, oh, I can do one, I have half an hour, I can do one more thing. And that one more thing puts me in 40 minutes, so gives me that 10 minutes late. So I'm learning my lesson to just, how important it is to be on time. I'm usually reliable, is the on time that doesn't always,
but my wife does you one better. She's Persian and Mexican. So there is really a fungible time is kind of this not so concrete concept.
Yeah, time it's very flexible. Time is very flexible in Brazil. But I do like, how time works here better. It's much more reliable. You say, you're going to be there, you're going to be there.
Right.
So I do like that. And Adam, you mentioned your wife a couple of times. You work together. How is that? And just to wrap up, I usually don't talk about people's marriage at all, but since you work together, how is that working together during COVID? And and living together, how has it been for you guys? So what's the secret of being able to have a marriage and work together?
Yeah, I mean, my wife has the much greater education than me. She has an MBA, and she's a former school teacher. So she has all these different, and she had a consulting business, a fundraising business. So she has a lot of the kind of experience in business and education that kind of helps guide our company. I rely on her very much for kind of high level strategy. And, she did interviews with potential hires. She has a much maybe, as good or maybe a better sense of people and personalities than I do. So we really complement each other when it comes to that sort of thing. And look, COVID was hard for a lot of people. For us, I mean, I was home. I wasn't in an office. She wasn't either. We found our spots in the house where we got our work done from. I won the office. She won the garage. But she was happy to be in there. And we just kind of got through it and got it done. I mean, we also have, 3 kids that required an insane amount of attention during that process. But luckily, we both have a very positive attitude and perception of the world around us, and don't take things too seriously, and also, don't expect much from people. We just kind of assume that it's our job, and if people do show up and want to help, then that's a great thing.
Mm-hmm. So and with 3 kids, how old are they?
4, 6, and 8.
Oh, okay. Building a business, 4, 6, and 8. What's the best way for you to deal with de-stressing, Adam?
I don't know. I because the stress is up here, so I don't know the answer to that. I will say that we have a massive village, right? There's 5 of us in our family, and there's an average of 8 or 10 people in my house at all times, right? There's aunts and uncles and grandparents and help and nannies, and whether you have have resources, and that's not about money necessarily, right? It's about
Mhm.
having a village, neighbors, and a community that can help. That is to us the key of having a big group of people who you trust and you can rely on to be there with you along the journey.
Well, you gave me a wonderful picture of, a family household, because that's exactly where I grew up too, with many generations in the same
Yeah.
household, and, all the hands and people there helping. So, well, Adam, thank you so much for making the time for us to speak today. Maybe I'll reach out to you and interview your wife too. It'd be nice to see the other side of the coin and talk to her. And so thank you so much. I wish you much success with your business, and also for all the wisdom that you gave us today. If there's any parting words that you want to give us, please.
No, just that I always have an open door. So anybody who reaches out to me, if I can be helpful to them, I'm glad to do it. I was the beneficiary of that, and I want to be helpful to others.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Again, this is Daniela Baker with Adam Probolsky, and giving you a piece of wisdom. And one of the things that I came up with our interview today is that entrepreneur spirit, that you had very early on, even though you didn't go to college, you just didn't sit on your sofa, watching VHS movies. You went for it. And also, the lessons of show up when you say you're going to show up. And I think those are timeless. It doesn't matter if it was 1980s or if 2021. I think those are, good things for young professionals to bring with them. And the FedEx one, I like the the FedEx. Maybe we'll put some stickers on it too, to just kind of stand out a little bit more. Adam, thank you so much. You be well, and good health to you.
Likewise.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
take care.